Good morning. I am really excited to have this opportunity to speak to you today and share what I have been learning about self-compassion from this book entitled Self-Compassion. Stop beating yourself up and leave insecurity behind. Woohoo! Written by psychologist Kristin Neff. And let me add that I was given the information that we have a few copies in the bookstore, and for today only, there's a 20% discount. Hello. So I want to begin with a question. Have any of you folks ever found fault with, let's say, behaviors or thoughts or feelings, and then had the committee in your head, you know the one I'm talking about, convene and have a trial and find you guilty, and then assign guilt and shame and self-loathing as a punishment? Okay, put your hands up. Just show of hands. Be brave. Be honest. Keep them up. Keep them up. I see them online too. Cool. I see 2 hands up. Take a look around. I want you to keep your hands up and take a look around at the number of hands that are up in the air. I think we can safely say, thank you. I think we can safely say that we all have a similar system of self-condemnation. And in fact, you know, the truth is probably if this attacking of ourselves were somehow exposed to the outside world, the police would be summoned to stop the abuse, right? Because not only is it verbal abuse, it's emotional abuse, and it's also physical abuse, and I'll explain later how it turns into physical abuse. We would be arrested and thrown behind bars. But sadly, to date, I don't think there's anything called internal head police. So we're unfortunately, and to our demise, allowed to continuously, mercilessly, and sometimes viciously pummel ourselves into stressed out, anxious, fearful, sad, depressed human beings. Not a pretty picture, is it? And most of us are very familiar with the ongoing critical comments that we say to ourselves, such as, oh, I can't try that, and I'm going to fail and humiliate myself. Or, you'll never get it right. Don't even try. You're so incompetent. Or, how could you mess this up so badly? Bobo the chimp could have done a better job. Or, no wonder you're alone. Nobody wants to be with somebody who complains all the time finding fault with things. Or, when you're not feeling well and you're lying on the couch, the voice that says, well, your to-do list is not getting done. You're not accomplishing a darn thing. You're such a slug. Or the ever-popular comments that arise when we look in the mirror. We're either too much of this or too little of that and just plain wrong. Sometimes we may not even be aware of the words that we use to berate ourselves, but we may instead feel the results of these hurtful words in our bodies, like a pain in our stomach, a tightening, anxiety or stress or fearful feelings. All of this that leaves us feeling less than, small and shameful. You may wonder why on earth we treat ourselves in ways that we would find deplorable if they were done to another human being. Ways that only serve to keep us imprisoned in our fears, our smallness, not feeling good enough, and unworthy. Well, as I was pondering this very question over the summer, I felt guided to this book. Kristin answers this question and covers so much more. In fact, this talk at one time was 20 pages long and lasted almost an hour. So I really had to pare it down, chop it down. This book is filled with all kinds of great stuff. And did I mention we have some copies in the bookstore? 20% off. So, why do we at times treat ourselves so ruthlessly? Why is it the committee in our head never goes on vacation? Well, let's consider first the role that our parents, teachers, and any authority figures played in helping us to develop this critical self-nature. Many of our parents, due to their own upbringing and background, didn't or couldn't provide us with the support, the nurturing, or the comfort that we so longed for. But rather, they tried to control and manipulate us to improve our behavior. They tried to keep us safe by using constant criticism. So we, as children, learned that we were somehow flawed, wrong, unworthy of love, and certainly had no right to be loved for who we were. If it happened that we were praised when we behaved in a way that was more acceptable to our parents, we learned then that love and acceptance are conditioned upon our performance and being as perfect as possible. So we set out about internalizing all these criticisms that we heard, and we told them to ourselves as a means to try and avoid being targeted and judged wrong. If we could stop ourselves from behaving in unacceptable ways and be more perfect, perhaps then we would be loved and accepted. Thus, the committee came into being. And to this day, we continue berating ourselves and continue this disparaging commentary in an attempt to motivate ourselves to behave in ways that others will find acceptable and worthy of love. Let me ask you, how's that working for us? Sometimes not that well. Sometimes it has an opposite effect. And in addition, the committee also has the important job of keeping us safe and alive. It takes this job very seriously. As long as we're operating within our comfort zone, all is well, and the committee may even decide to go on a coffee break. But make one move to step over that line into uncharted territory, and they instantly chuck the coffee, charge back, ready to provide us with a litany of reasons and warnings as to why we shouldn't step out and try something new. I'd like to share a personal example here. Happened the last day of second grade. I had on this new white dress that my mother had made, full skirt over the top of many layers of those crinoline petticoats. We're talking back in the 50s now. And I had on my brand new black shiny Mary Jane shoes. I thought I was something else. The class was eating their end of the year party cake at their desks, and the teacher was playing a record up in the front, and 2 students at a time came up in front and demonstrated some dance that we'd learned in gym class. Again, I'm talking 50s, gym class dancing. So there I was up in front with Brooks Carnes, and we're doing some kind of a jig or a square dance twirl or something. I don't know. It kind of eludes me up to the point where my heel on my brand new Mary Jane shoe skidded across that slippery linoleum floor and launched me briefly upwards in slow motion, only to come crashing down and land squarely on my bottom with my skirt, petticoats, and everything up over the top of my head. Not a pretty picture. And my shame was just, so cemented in my mind as Brooks Carnes turns on his heel, which did not skid, as he sulks away, saying to me, "You are so stupid." The class is laughing uproariously, oblivious to my bruised ego and my bruised bottom. And at that point, I summoned a new voice in my head, a new committee member. A new committee member that would prevent me from taking risks like that again that could result in another devastating heel skid. So this is just one example of how we all set up this committee in our head. This committee whose job it is to keep us safe, behaving appropriately, avoiding abandonment, and so on. Kristen Neff also talks about in this book the things that we do to avoid our own inner self-criticisms. And one of these things is enhancing our self-esteem. Now, self-esteem is our estimation is estimation of our own self-worth or value, and it's based on how we often perceive ourselves as, in comparison to others, as maybe a little better than or a little more special than others. And we do this to preserve our own self-esteem so that we don't have to face what's being said in our head about ourselves. We're not going to find ourselves as being less than if we can be better than. So this leads, of course, to putting other people down so we can feel good about ourselves. It's something we all do. We're trying to maintain our good self-esteem. This can lead to narcissistic and self-absorbed behavior. You may know some people that they can't wait to tell you about all their accomplishments, about all their toys, about how well they did in college, how smart they are, their brilliant ideas, how spiritual they are, how many awakenings they've had. And all this is done to preserve their self-esteem, but if you buy it, then you buy into that you're being less than and they're being more than. Self-esteem fluctuates, however, based on our perceived successes or failures. So if things are going well, our self-esteem is intact. We're feeling pretty good about ourselves. But if we mess up or fail in some way, our self-esteem takes a sharp turn south. Not so, however, with self-compassion. Self-compassion is always available to us because it is offered to us by us. Kristen Neff states, "The research that my colleagues and I have conducted over the past decade shows that self-compassion is a powerful way to achieve emotional well-being and contentment in our lives." Sounds good. By giving ourselves unconditional kindness and comfort, while embracing the human experience, difficult as it is, we avoid destructive patterns of fear, negativity, and isolation. At the same time, self-compassion fosters positive mind states such as happiness and optimism. The nurturing quality of self-compassion allows us to flourish, to appreciate the beauty and richness of life, even in hard times. When we soothe our agitated minds with self-compassion, we're better able to notice what's right as well as what's wrong, so we can orient ourselves toward that which gives us joy. She goes on to say, self-compassion provides an island of calm, a refuge from the stormy seas of endless positive and negative self-judgment, so that we can finally stop asking, am I as good as they are? Or, am I good enough? Right here at our fingertips, we have the means to provide ourselves with the warm, supportive care that we deeply yearn for. By tapping into our inner wellsprings of kindness, acknowledging our shared nature, our imperfect human condition, we can start to feel more secure, accepted, and alive. Now, doesn't that sound like something we'd all like to experience? You want to find out how to give yourselves compassion instead of criticism?
Yeah.
Well, according to Kristen, self-compassion has 3 components, we'll call them 3 seeds, that we need to plant in order to develop compassion for ourselves. The first seed of self-compassion is self-kindness, or comforting ourselves when we're in pain. First, we have to stop what we're doing and notice that we are in pain, or that we're suffering. Maybe we're feeling afraid, anxious, angry, whatever. Because we can't help ourselves if we're not even aware that we need help. Now, this pain or suffering can be a response to 2 different situations. The first situation is something that's happening in our environment that's upsetting us. The house is flooded. We have illness in our family. Our pet needs to go to the vet. Somebody lost a job. Things that are challenging us and upsetting us in our environment. The second situation that can cause us pain and suffering is the response to our own inner critical thinking. 2 situations. Our typical response to the first situation, something going on in our environment, is to jump right in, focused on problem solving, fixing that thing, whatever it is, without acknowledging the amount of stress, fear, and anxiety that we have just accumulated. So instead of that approach, we want to take a moment and become aware of what it is that we're feeling. We have to let ourselves be moved by our pain to want to help ourselves, just as we would be moved by someone else's pain to help them. Once we notice we're in pain, either from something going on in our environment or from our own critical self-thinking, we begin actively comforting ourselves with kind and caring language, replacing any negative self-talk that we may be experiencing. We can offer kindness and understanding by saying to ourselves, gee, this is really hard or stressful for me right now. Or, it's so painful to feel inadequate. Or, it's okay to be upset and angry. I'm sorry this is happening to you. Or, it really hurts to feel left out. Or, it's okay to mess up, to be imperfect. Everyone makes mistakes. And then we ask ourselves, how can I take care of and comfort myself right now? Perhaps I need to take a walk. Perhaps I need to call a friend and ask for help. Or maybe I need to take a break and just sit down and watch the Ellen DeGeneres show. You always feel good when you do that, don't you? So this kind of caring language makes us feel supported in a difficult time, just as if a friend were offering their support to us in a difficult time. In addition, we can offer ourselves a gentle hug, soothing our discomfort like we did in the meditation. And you don't have to worry about anybody looking at you because there's nobody there going to be around probably to see you giving yourself a hug. And I'll tell you why later that's an important thing to do. You may think this all sounds pretty elementary, or maybe just plain silly, or really weird. Comforting yourself with kind and supportive words and giving hugs, but I challenge you to try it. My standing here today is due in large part to applying these very same techniques. I sat for 1 hour, pen to paper, doing absolutely nothing except terrorizing myself with thoughts of, you can't possibly do this. It's going to be another heel skid into humiliation. Finally, I realized that I indeed had better start planting a few of these seeds of self-compassion if I wanted to be able to share even one word about them to you folks. So I acknowledged my feelings of fear and anxiety with soothing, comforting words, offered a hug or 2 or 20, and then also remembered that most people would feel the same way and would rather be struck by lightning than stand here and speak before a group. Even a group as loving and receptive and wonderful as you are. So with that, I was able to get started. But I want to tell you, this is a day-to-day, minute-to-minute practice. It's not something you think about for 5 minutes and you're done with it. You commit and intend to these seeds that you're planting. And when you really think about it, all we're doing is shifting our attention away from our fear-based thinking that we have created to focus on our own innate love and compassion. As divine expressions in form, divine expressions of God in form, our true nature or essence is that of love, compassion, kindness, power, light, expansiveness, right? And so on, and all that. So we already have the capacity to be loving and caring. We were born with it. We don't have to look outside ourselves to find tender comfort. We are that. We can offer that kind and loving nature to ourselves constantly, moment to moment. And now here's another really cool thing I learned in the book. You know, this book that we have in the bookstore, 20% off? Did you know that being treated kindly has a positive effect on our bodies? I didn't know that. I don't know, maybe you all knew that, but I did not know that. So it's no wonder that we all feel so great after Sunday here at Unity. In addition to being reminded of who we are as God's beloved, divine beings of love and light, we also share many hugs and share many kind words with each other. Well, it turns out that physical gestures of affection, like hugs and kind language, cause our bodies to release a hormone called oxytocin. It has been found that as we increase the level of oxytocin in our bodies, feelings of calm, safety, trust, connectedness, warmth, compassion all increase. At the same time, we're decreasing fear, anxiety, blood pressure, and cortisol levels, all associated with stress. Way cool, huh? Well, here's even better news. Our bodies don't differentiate between kind thoughts, feelings, and words that we give and receive to others, or those that we direct towards ourselves. Meaning that kind words and compassion that we offer to ourselves also releases oxytocin, as well as a hug. This, to me, was huge, and reason enough to start a kindness campaign with ourselves, don't you think?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I have to also tell you that, unfortunately, there's some bad news. The other side of this, right? Our bodies respond also to threatening situations. We have residing in our brains a walnut-sized threat detector called the amygdala. I love that word, amygdala. Say that with me, amygdala. This amygdala is on a constant reconnaissance mission, evaluating our environment, assessing the threat level 24/7. Its job is to alert us to signs of stress or danger. It activates the automatic flight, fight, or freeze reactions. It sends signals that increase blood pressure, adrenaline, and the hormone cortisol. Now, sadly, our friend the amygdala is not designed to be accurate, just fast. So any perceived threat to our physical or emotional well-being causes it to marshal the forces, and it does not differentiate between threats perceived in our external environment and threats perceived in our internal environment. Hence, our self-critical attacks activate our amygdalas and then wreak havoc on our bodies. All the more reason to start treating ourselves with kindness and compassion. The second seed of self-compassion is the recognition of the common human experience. When we're in touch with our common humanity, we remember that feelings of inadequacy and disappointment are shared by all, Kristen states. Self-compassion remembers that everyone suffers, and it offers comfort because everyone is human. The pain I feel in difficult times is the same pain that you feel in difficult times. The triggers are different, the circumstances are different, the degree of pain is different, but the process is the same. We can't always get what we want. And this is true for everyone, including the Rolling Stones. Often when we're faced with a challenging situation that's not our fault, like an illness or loss of job, we tend to think that we're the only ones experiencing such a difficult time and that life shouldn't be so hard. If we are able to recognize that everyone faces similar problems and difficulties in their lives, we can soften our pain. It still hurts, but we don't add to it the pain of isolation, feeling separated from everyone. We're all in this human race together, racing to get our needs met, our needs to be loved, our need to be accepted. Well, who better to turn to than our own inner loving essence, available 24/7 to meet our needs? The third seed of self-compassion is mindfulness. This refers to seeing things just as they are, no more, no less, and then accepting without judgment whatever's happening in the present moment. Being mindful means that, we see our situation clearly and we're not caught up in or lost in our thoughts or emotions. We notice what is happening and what we're feeling. We're feeling angry or fear, stress, anxious, pain in our back, whatever, without getting identified with and carried away with those thoughts and feelings. When we can mindfully see things as they are, we don't overreact or catastrophize about a situation, making mountains out of molehills. You ever done that? Well, we get totally wrapped up in the drama that's unfolding in our lives and overreact with fear, anger, or whatever. We do not accept things the way they are. We want them to be different. They should be different, less painful, easier, more the way we want them to be. All the while we're thinking, this should not be happening to me. Well, the deli counter in Publix was the recent site of my own personal drama. After waiting impatiently for 15 minutes while one woman selected 6 slices of every deli item known to mankind. I was furious. I was ready to ram her cart, and everything all into the produce area with my cart. In retrospect, I could have acknowledged my feelings of stress and been mindful of the situation. I could have acknowledged my feelings of impatience and anxiety over wasting time waiting for bologna instead of working on my talk. I could have reminded myself it would be okay, there were still a few days left till Sunday. Things don't always go the way we think they should, especially in the deli area. And I would have remained relatively calm instead of becoming a raving lunatic. French philosopher Montaigne once said, "My life has been filled with terrible misfortune, most of which never happened." I think we can all relate to that. So I invite you to try out and plant these 3 seeds of compassion. The first one being self-kindness. Replacing our negative, critical self-talk with words of kindness and offering ourselves comfort and or a hug when we're in pain or stress. 2, recognizing our common humanity, reminding ourselves that everyone encounters pain in difficult situations. We're all in this together. We all need and we all want to be loved and accepted. And the 3rd seed, mindfulness, holding our thoughts and emotions in mindful awareness, seeing and accepting situations as they are and choosing how we want to respond. So if you're serious about creating a kinder, gentler relationship with yourself and everyone around you, I highly recommend this book. 20% off today only in the bookstore. And I want to thank you for being such a loving, receptive audience. And have a compassion-filled week, but most of all, remember, be kind to yourselves. Namaste.